2021. A young but fairly seasoned rock quartet would throw the world into a frenzy. With Damiano David on vocals, Victoria DeAngelis on bass, Thomas Raggi on guitar, and Ethan Torchio on drums. These incredibly skilled musicians shook the world with their provocative looks and explosive performances. Their stardom was furthermore accelerated when they walked away from Eurovision as the victors after having just taken first place during Italy's Sanremo contest.
Sei freddo, Edan, hai vinto Sanremo! Hai vinto Sanremo!
But what is it about this group, and specifically their album, Teatro d'Ira Volume 1, that caused the world to stop, stare, and listen to their clever melodies? Let's uncover this secret together. It is apparent, even on first listen, that Måneskin are not your average 20-ish-year-old ensemble. Few groups within their introductory years are as tight-knit and as well-woven as they are. This flamboyant four-piece all have their own proper inspirations that come together and mesh to create the sound of the band that we know today. Frontman Damiano listens to a lot of early 2000s rock, such as The Strokes and Arctic Monkeys. He also appreciates pop artists such as Justin Timberlake. Thomas prefers the classic rock bands of the 70s and 80s like Zeppelin and Hendrix, and has a taste for metal as well. Victoria prefers a heavier sound, with inspirations ranging from Aussie punk band Amyl and the Sniffers to hardstyle techno with the likes of Brutalismus 3000. Ethan, according to the band, is the black sheep, because his influences stem from jazz, instrumentals, classic music, as well as Timbaland. With the background and formation as eclectic as theirs, it is no surprise that their sound would capture the ears of millions. Formed in 2016, Måneskin would begin their career on the streets of Rome, busking for passerbys, and by their third year as a band, they had already become incredibly well adjusted with the concept of live shows, having been trained by their aforementioned street performances and their over-the-top appearance on X Factor in 2017. But come the following year, they would release their first studio album, Il Ballo della Vita, The Dance of Life, a 12-track LP with a mix of pop and rock songs sung primarily in Italian, with a few songs in English. Following their first ever European tour held between 2018 to 2019, the band would leave their native Rome and relocate to London to refine their sound and understanding of music as a whole. Still spurred on by the interactions and atmospheres of live performances, the band experimented heavily with the idea of live recordings and the sounds of analog equipment. For their upcoming record, they had a riveting new idea. Upon their return to Italy, they began to work on these ideas that were birthed whilst abroad in London, but this time with an approach completely different from the last album. No need for a full studio team, let's cut the extra musicians and the extra voices. It would just be the four of them with the help of only one producer, Fabrizio Ferraguzzo. Now all that's left is to find a studio far from any distractions. They eventually settled on Mulino Recording Studio in the town of Acquapendente. Weeks and months were then spent in this out-of-the-way town, writing, recording, playing, and most of all, experimenting. They always had an interest in the sounds of bootlegged live recordings of the 70s, and the usage of the prior mentioned analog equipment. Here is a very brief rundown on 1. Bootlegging, if you are not familiar, and 2. The difference between an analog recording process versus a digital recording process. Number 1. Bootlegging is a term that denotes the illegal or illicit distribution of a product, in this case, music, without the consent or knowledge of the owner. For instance, someone who would want to create a bootlegged record would sneak recording equipment into a live show, record the show, and then have it pressed onto a vinyl, and the record would have the same quality of the live show. Number 2. Analog recording versus digital recording. The primary difference between the two is that when a file is recorded with an analog setup, everything is baked into that file, which doesn't allow for much adjustment afterwards, which is perfect if you have a specific sound that's dialed in and that you want to perfect. Digital is a lot more flexible in allowing artists to make more changes after the recording is finished, but doesn't have the same qualities as analog. Victoria had said in an interview that, "We chose to record it in this studio where we lived, and we did a full immersion by recording everything live. We wanted to keep that raw flavor typical of a band and let our three instruments and Damiano's voice be heard, without any additions." This is a big difference with the first album, because Teatro d'Ira is conceived from a live point of view. We said to each other, let's do something that can only be played by the three of us and where you can hear what each individual instrument does. We're very happy with the sound we've obtained, even if today it is perhaps a bit atypical. Time would continue to pass, and little by little, the sound and form of the album was beginning to take shape. And come March 19th, 2021, the album was released into the world, comprised of 8 tracks in total, 6 in Italian and 2 in English. Let's take a look at the beautiful poetry in this album, hidden to us who don't speak Italian, and as well, the amazing artistry behind the whole process. The Sanremo and Eurovision winning opening track, Zitti e Buoni, grabs you by force and throws you into this world that the band has created. It's rebellious, it's fierce, and most importantly, it is a far departure from the sound of their previous record. From the second the guitar riff begins, you know you're in for an electric, energetic, and oftentimes dramatic ride. This track begins with a declaration from Damiano, a revolt against everything that the band doesn't align with. Now, by this time in the track, you've probably noticed how audible and powerful each and every instrument is in the mix. No one member tramples over the other in terms of force. The drums rock and clash, the guitar rings powerfully, and the bass is rock solid and present, like that which you'd find in a funk band. Every member has their defining moment, especially Victoria with her solo here. Damiano then continues on about his feelings of feeling excluded and wanting to break the barriers that stand before him, exploding into that iconic chorus. Zitti e Buoni is the perfect introductory track to this album. It's fiery, it's rebellious, and above all, it's angry. And this anger and rage is something that shows up all over this body of work. It's a theme that appears quite frequently, whether stated explicitly or conveyed through instrumentation. Damiano had said in an interview with Revenues Italia that ours is not an anger directed towards someone, but an anger that moves, that creates revolutions, a cathartic anger aimed at oppressions and oppressors, which leads to letting off steam and rebelling against everything that makes you feel wrong, and which, as a result, leads to a rebirth and a change. This, subsequently, is also where the title of the album stems from. Damiano continues on. We wanted to place this very powerful force in a context, that of the theater, which in the common imagination is perceived as elegant and calm. We like this antithesis, a contrast that lives when the curtains open and, instead of a show or a ballet, we find ourselves catapulted into this explosion of energy. The theater is a metaphor to represent art, the place where this powerful impulse generates something artistic and positive. This setting of a theater translates perfectly when you hear songs like Coraline, or Coraline, a powerful ballad that shines the spotlight on the titular character, Coraline. No, not that one. Although that film is an easy 10, it's a different Coraline. We focus on this character who always puts others before herself, to the point where it hurts deeply. She carries the pain of others inside of her, and it's paralyzing. The transition from Zitti e Buoni to this track is the first moment on the album where Måneskin show us the incredible range that they're capable of providing on a record. From high-energy anthem to poetic, emotional ballad. Within this stage that they've constructed, we're able to see them from all sides. And in the case of Coraline, we can see the poignant and touching side of the band. The story and the instrumental both evolve with the progression of the song, with the band hitting you at full force, while Damiano hurls the tearful lyrics of our tragic character. It's an incredibly heartfelt and moving performance. Once it reaches the top, it must descend, back to the beginning. A duet between Thomas's arpeggiated riff and Damiano's voice, ending with the hopes that Coraline is able to run away to a castle, where she'll be safe from all harm. Lividi sui gomiti, or Bruises on Our Elbows, sees wrath and rage take the stage once more. It opens with a powerful attack from the band, and then a rap rock style of singing from Damiano, whose voice teeters between calmed control and electric fury. His words once again scream of individuality and of not being a coward, actively choosing to stand out and potentially be a target of ridicule, instead of choosing to conform to the norms of society. He also makes a parallel between their experiences and the life of Frida Kahlo, saying, essentially saying that those who ridicule and watch from the sidelines have never seen or felt the spotlight. They're oblivious to the feeling of being enchanted with gold, an audience, money, tours, but then being impaled with vitriol and hatred, mocked for being one's true self. The unrelenting anger that he sings with on this track is one that many can relate to, and is one that resonates deeply with those who dare to choose a life that doesn't align with the views of the world that surrounds them. Those who choose to live life according to their own rules. This provocative messaging and lyricism is continued on into I Wanna Be Your Slave. This track was a second just after Zitti e Buoni to hit astronomical international success with its raunchy, playful lyrics and flamboyant performance of the album. Not to mention the ultra-viral clip that introduced me and millions of others to this new, stylish rock band. It's a funky and infectious track that challenges the binaries and restrictions of sexuality and gender norms. Damiano also had said after the release of this track that "I Wanna Be Your Slave" would gift me with the first complaints for its rude lyrics. But despite the backlash he knew they would receive for a track like this, they decided to release it anyway. But how was a song like this born in the first place? I'll let Damiano explain.
For "I Wanna Be Your Slave," that's
Yeah, I wrote the riff
Yeah.
with the piano on the phone,
yeah,
like the mini piano.
That's pretty baller.
yeah. And we say, oh, okay, sounds
because
good.
yeah.
But you were able to hear it right from that.
Yeah, it was just in my mind. I was thinking about, I don't know, and I heard this riff and I said I have to record it. So I opened GarageBand and I said,
And we say, well, it's a banger.
yeah.
And from this little melody would come the iconic track that we now know as "I Wanna Be Your Slave," which has since gone on to chart worldwide and be certified platinum numerous times. There's also an additional version that features the living rock legend Iggy Pop as well. And let's appreciate their use of the cowbells here.
Be a master. I wanna make your heartbeat run like roller coasters. I wanna be a good.
I want to shift your attention now to one of the more underrated tracks on the record, and personally, one of my favorites. The angriest and most visceral performance on the entire record. One born from frustrations of being excluded, that feeling of failing 100 times and still having to get back up. In Nome del Padre is the shining example of how hardcore and intense the sound of Måneskin can get, with Damiano taking on a much more aggressive vocal tone than what we've heard on previous tracks. It's also the first time on the album where we really see that frustration and anger be developed and explained more thoroughly. Damiano adds some further insight in this interview.
Allora, mi riallaccio alla domanda del collega sulla vostra rabbia. Volevo sapere in particolare in nome del padre, dove siete veramente incazzatissimi. Vabbè, Damiano ha accennato che ce l'avete un po' con la gente che vi dice che non siete rock, però volevo capire questo padre, insomma, in quale direzione incanalate la vostra ira in questo pezzo in particolare molto incazzoso. E poi invece dall'altra parte chi è Coraline, è un pezzo che veramente è bellissimo, se è una ragazza, una persona che avete conosciuto o di cui avete sentito parlare. Detto ciò, in bocca al lupo per tutto.
Grazie mille. Allora, per quanto riguarda appunto In nome del padre, non è solo verso chi insomma ci dice oddio che non siamo rock, stavo venendo dallo sgabello, che ci dice che non siamo rock, è un po' proprio per tutti quelli che ci hanno detto cioè, dove andate, ma che fate, ma che cos'è, ma devi studiare, tipo io quando dovevamo andare a X Factor in teoria dovevo tornare e fare un esame a scuola per essere riammesso e mi è stato detto no, non lo puoi fare, sei bocciato, cioè insomma è per tutte queste situazioni che si sono create, tutti un po' i limiti che hanno provato a imporci e tutte le barriere che hanno provato a metterci, che ci dicevano dove andate, andiamo a vincere Sanremo 2021.
Dai!
In this track as well, Damiano also makes a few references to the suffering of Jesus.
Mi hanno chiamato in tutti i modi, anche codardo, sono morto più di 100 volte, poi morto invano.
Creating another parallel, saying, like Jesus, he is as well to be a sacrifice, not to a higher being such as God, but to his music and his passion. And as well that no matter how many times he's metaphorically killed, he'll continue to rise and rise again from the ashes of his defeats. With the final verse of this song, we hear Damiano at his most passionate,
growling lyrics about the struggles of being an artist,
and the overwhelming pressure that comes with being successful. And that frustration bursts outwards with the band's vicious instrumental, following Damiano's final scream of For Your Love is the second English song on the record.
According to Måneskin, For Your Love speaks about
love at first sight, possession and obsession, a toxic relationship between the protagonist and his muse. It's the perfect follow-up to the embers left by In nome del padre, and not to mention that Damiano's vocal performance is beyond this earth. For Your Love is a testament of what Måneskin do best when writing in English. The lyrics are sexy and provocative, they're on the nose and vibrant, and once more, each member has their defining moment on the track. Mainly Thomas, who shreds all along the progression of this track. For track number 7, the stage lights dim, the fog sets in, and the air turns cold, and we see Damiano at his most transparent, La paura del buio, or fear of the dark, shows us the perspective of those on the stage, the doubts that stem from being perceived broadly by millions of people, the mockery and the scorn that one experiences, but also the strength that one needs to keep going despite all of this. The dark that is being feared, in this case being hatred, judgment, and ridicule. Damiano says,
E poi mi prendi, mi mordi, mi toglimi tutto, continuerò a non avere la paura del buio ed anche quando sarò qui per terra distrutto, continuerò a non avere la paura del buio e quindi...
outwardly stating that he will never succumb to the backlash, the derision, the fear. No matter how many times he's abused, he'll continue to have the courage to proceed. This song accurately describes the feeling an artist would feel about their creation, the multifaceted feelings of great pride, for freely expressing the way you feel to the world versus feeling ridiculed for being as authentic as possible in a world that would prefer if you weren't. It's a brilliant and courageous piece of music that succeeds in telling the story of these 4 kids who went from being relatively known throughout Europe to being skyrocketed to stardom in the blink of an eye. And quickly, the narrative shifts. It's no longer Damiano and the band who are afraid. It's the spectator, those who are quick to ridicule and cast judgment, and they will never know nor understand the level of dedication it requires to be an artist. And Damiano lets us know at the end of the day, it is them who return to watch the spectacle.
Da me con le mani giunte.
And that brings us to the closing piece on our theatrical journey, the emotionally moving Vent'anni. Vent'anni was the first single to be released from the album, releasing on October 30th, 2020, giving the world a glimpse into their upcoming project. It speaks about the hardships that come with being so young, explaining yourself to people who'll never understand, working 5 times as hard as the rest of your competition, and being true to yourself so that you never lose that creative light and inspiration. Damiano expands, saying in an interview, "The first 4 sentences are personal. Everyone has their say. They're there and they're within everyone's reach. And the meaning of the piece is this. First of all, we too have our weaknesses. It would have been hypocritical to talk about our fears without really showing them. I wrote what I myself would have liked to hear from someone older, now that I'm 20 years old. Words addressed to peers, but which also make those who are 20 years old remember how much the doubt of being nobody will hurt, how scary it is at that age, but at the same time how natural it is to make mistakes driven by the desire to do something great, because you will be someone if you remain different from the others." The video for this track shows the band at their most fraternal, sharing warm embraces and enjoying each other's companionship, symbolically enjoying the calm before the storm, right before they'd be thrust into the world-wide spotlight just months later, the perfect foreshadow into an exciting new part of their career. When looking at this album as a whole and from a much more analytic standpoint, for us who don't speak Italian, it's easy to see why Teatro Diera Volume 1 was such a hit. From a production standpoint, the sounds are fresh and inspired, and they 100% succeed in creating a live atmosphere in this album. Every time I take a listen, it's like the band is transported to wherever I am, and they started tearing it down. From a lyrical aspect, it's hard-hitting, poignant, and awe-inspiring. The rap rock growls of Damiano shake you to the core, and his words breathe creativity. And we can't speak about Måneskin without mentioning their live performances. I've been lucky enough to catch them 2 times, and both times were phenomenal. Their sound production is sharp and precise, allowing you to hear all 4 of the members with 0 interference. Their crowd work is legendary, with every single one of them, except for Ethan for obvious reasons, interacting with and going into the crowd, and their energy is something that you must see with your own eyes. With their striking appearance and rowdy live shows, it's easy to see why this group of 4 brilliant creatives managed to conquer the world. Hey, thanks so much as always for watching. Go ahead and leave a like if you've enjoyed this video. And if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, why not click the subscribe button for more videos like this? Right over here, you'll find my previous video and my socials as well. Thank you once again, and peace.